As 25 million residents in China remain on COVID lockdown, today officials seem to ease some of those restrictions, actually letting some people go outside.
Yeah, Patrick Falk has the latest from Shanghai.
Well, today, residents in more than 7,000 housing units were allowed outside of their homes for the first time in 2 weeks in Shanghai, in areas that have been classified as low risk. Now, we understand that there was an expectation that they'd be allowed to leave their residential compounds, but authorities have seemingly walked that back and not allowed people to leave their immediate residential vicinities for the most part, amid ongoing concerns about the spread of the virus. They said that they understand that people want to get out and get some fresh air and stock up on food and other supplies after being cooped up at home for so long, but they couldn't afford for people to gather in, quote, a disorderly manner and risk epidemic control efforts. In a separate development, the State Department today ordered all non-essential staff at the Shanghai consulate to leave the city over concerns about ongoing restrictions there. Remember, they said that people could voluntarily leave last Friday, prompting a backlash from authorities in China. We're not quite sure why they've mandated this now, but it has been suggested that it gives the impression that the situation is worsening in Shanghai. Authorities in China have certainly taken it to mean just that. The Foreign Ministry today accused the U.S. of smearing China's epidemic control efforts, but there shouldn't be any reason for surprise, given that there has been a real outcry among its own citizens in Shanghai over the lockdown, which is now in its third week.
All right, Patrick Falk, thank you. Well, so China has a zero COVID policy, but some 26,000 residents, as we were just hearing, currently have COVID. And joining us now to discuss that and some other issues is author of The Coming Collapse of China, Gordon Chang. Gordon, thank you very much for joining us. Let's just begin with your thoughts there, because we hear, lockdowns in China and what's going on in Shanghai. Any indication that that could be coming here again?
Omicron BA2, which is a subvariant that is now in Shanghai, has been ripping across the entire country. And now there are indications it's going to Guangzhou, which is the capital of Guangdong province. That's China's factory floor. That means it's returning to Guangdong province within the space of 3 weeks. This is a situation that must have Beijing in panic.
Gordon, let me ask you this about what China's doing. They're telling us in Shanghai, I believe the number was like 130,000 people had cases, but nobody died. So are they lying to us?
But this is not a question of the disease, Bob. This is a question of the Communist Party propaganda line, because China has made it a test of their legitimacy controlling the number of cases. And that's why this is a matter of extreme concern for the regime. They're not worried about the people of China. They're worried about themselves and their continued rule.
Yeah. In the meantime, have these people locked down. They can't get food. They're literally starving to death in Shanghai. Gordon, switching gears, we want to ask you about this. China state media confirming that the country recently delivered 3 anti-aircraft missile systems to Serbia, which, of course, is a Russian ally. And that's not all. China also said to be expanding its nuclear arsenal over fears of a conflict with the United States. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, those developments really are troubling. One of the things is, first of all, when Chinese planes were delivering those anti-aircraft systems, they flew over actually 2 NATO countries, Turkey and Bulgaria. And I don't know why we would allow this, because this is material that is probably going to end up in Russian hands. Serbia is a very close friend of Russia. And I suspect that what China is doing is not delivering material directly to Russia, which would cause problems in Washington, which means would cause problems in Beijing. But what they're doing is they're saying, oh, no, we're just going to give them to some country in Europe. I think this material is going to end up on the Ukrainian battlefield. With regard to those missile silos that China's been building, they're going to use those to intimidate the United States. They see that Vladimir Putin has been able to intimidate President Biden, and so China wants to do the same thing if it takes Taiwan or Japan or the Philippines or India or some other country.
Now, Gordon, what's the status with China and capitalism? It seemed, though, there was great promise for years that they might actually be engaging in more free enterprise. That, of course, is a threat to communism and the communist leaders. Where do we stand right now, and which direction is the country going?
Well, it's going back to where it started under Mao Zedong in the 1950s, because Xi Jinping believes in a Maoist state-dominated economy. So he's closing China off. He's putting more money and resources into the state enterprises. And it's not only foreign companies that are being disadvantaged by this, Bob. It's also domestic Chinese private entrepreneurs, most famously the big tech companies, which have been under attack for about a year now. So this is China going back to a very dark situation.
And do you think that the current world situation is pushing them more in that direction because perhaps they see a separate team of sorts developing? You and I were talking off camera about any sort of coordination that is going on between Russia, China, Serbia, Iran, of which Russia is still involved in our negotiations on the nuclear deal with Iran.
Well, this is crazy because, you know, while we're trying to prevent the Russians from tearing apart Ukraine and by extension the international system, the Biden administration is negotiating for an Iran nuke deal, which would end up giving relief to important Russian companies. I just don't know how this works out. But the point is here, it's not that China's being pushed. China and Russia together are pushing the rest of the world. And remember, this is a new axis. This is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and perhaps Algeria. So this is very much the world cleaving into two with a new axis.
We've only got about 30 seconds, Gordon, but if you were advising President Biden, what is he getting wrong about China?
Everything. He won't call China an adversary. He won't call us Chinese what they call us, which are enemies. He says, oh, they're just merely competitors. No, they're not merely competitors. They are enemies, and we have to understand that, or we're going to lose our country.
Okay. Well put. Gordon Chang, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, guys.